I trusted my sister so much that I cared for her kids like they were my own. But while I was saving her son from a breathing scare, she walked into my daycare office and drained the money that kept everything alive. And the camera saw more than she ever expected. My name is Maela Henswick. I am 34 years old and I own a small daycare in Carver Falls, Ohio, called Little Lantern Learning House. For 10 years, I learned how to read children before they had the words to explain what was wrong. I could tell when a toddler was hungry but too shy to ask. I could tell when a preschooler was angry because he missed his dad. I could tell when a child was quiet because she was tired, scared, or simply waiting for one safe adult to notice her. I built my whole life around paying attention to small things. But somehow, I missed the dangers standing inside my own family. I missed the way my younger sister watched my office door. I missed the way her husband asked questions about tuition payments. I missed the way my mother called my sacrifices helping out until helping out became the only role I was allowed to have. What my sister Taryn did while I was taking care of her sick little boy almost shut down everything I had built. And what one hallway camera recorded that afternoon changed the way my staff, my parents, and my entire family looked at her forever. Little Lantern was not a rich business. It was not a big company with a corporate office, investors, and a legal team on speed dial. It was a small converted building on Harbor Mill Road, the kind of place you might drive past without noticing if you were not looking for the hand-painted sign by the sidewalk. Before it was a daycare, it had been a dentist's office. The rooms were narrow, the floors were scratched, and the parking lot cracked every winter when the Ohio cold got inside the concrete. When I first signed the lease, there was still a faded tooth painted on the front window. I scraped it off myself with a razor blade on a Saturday morning, then painted yellow lanterns across the glass because I wanted the children to feel like they were walking into a warm place, not an old medical office. I bought secondhand cribs from a closing church nursery, washed every plastic toy with bleach water, and spent nights building little shelves from cheap pine boards because new classroom furniture was more expensive than my first car. I did not open that daycare because I thought it would make me rich. Anyone who has worked in childcare knows there are easier ways to make money. I opened it because I had spent years inside places where children were treated like numbers on a clipboard. I had worked for centers where staff were rushed, underpaid, and tired. I had seen babies passed from arm to arm because the room was short-staffed. I had seen parents cry in parking lots because they could not afford care, but could not afford to miss work either. So I wanted to build a place that felt steady. I wanted teachers who knew every child's favorite blanket, every allergy, every fear, every little victory. I wanted a child to leave Little Lantern at 5 years old, knowing that at least for a few hours a day, the world had been kind to them. By the time everything happened, Little Lantern had 21 children enrolled, 4 staff members, 3 classrooms, and a backyard playground with a crooked maple tree near the fence. We had an infant room with soft rugs and low shelves, a toddler room where the paint was always chipped from toy trucks hitting the wall, and a preschool room with a reading corner shaped like a little tent. Every Friday, I made the same checklist: payroll, food order, insurance, cleaning supplies, tuition deposits, parent messages, licensing notes. I knew every number because I had to. Childcare is love, yes, but it is also compliance, liability, payroll taxes, food safety, background checks, emergency contacts, and 1,000 small records that can ruin you if you ignore them. That habit of keeping records was the reason I survived what my sister did. And at the time, I thought I was just being careful. Later, I understood that careful was the only shield I had. If you have ever built something with your own hands and then had someone close to you act like they had a right to take from it, stay with me. This is not just about money. It is about trust, boundaries, and the painful moment when you realize kindness without protection becomes an open door. Like the video, if that truth already feels familiar, and share it with someone who keeps being called selfish for finally saying no. My younger sister's name is Taryn Henswick Quaid. She is 4 years younger than me, and when we were children, I protected her like it was my job. Our father left when I was 11 and she was 7. He did not leave in one big dramatic scene. He left slowly in missed dinners, unpaid bills, long silences, and then finally in a truck that never came back up our driveway. After that, our mother, Dessa, worked at a pharmacy counter and took extra shifts whenever she could. I became the second adult in the house before I knew how to spell responsibility. I packed Taryn's lunches. I walked her to the bus stop. I helped her with homework. I told teachers mom was busy when really she was exhausted in her bedroom with the lights off. Taryn was the soft one, the pretty one, the one adults wanted to comfort. I was the capable one. That word sounds like a compliment until it becomes a cage. Taryn grew up learning that if something was hard, Milo would handle it. If she forgot lunch money, I found it. If she missed a deadline, I made excuses for her. If she cried, Mom looked at me as if my calm could fix it. Years later, after I opened the daycare, that pattern followed us like a shadow. Taryn married Eldon Quaid when she was 25. Eldon had a clean beard line, shiny shoes, and the kind of confidence that made people assume he knew what he was doing. He called himself a contractor, but his jobs always seemed to end with unpaid suppliers, angry clients, and a new plan that was going to turn everything around. Taryn believed him because believing him was easier than admitting she had married a man who treated every failure like bad luck and every loan like income. Their children were the part that made everything complicated. Ren was 5, serious and sensitive, with wide gray eyes and breathing trouble that got worse when he panicked. Sophie was 3, quiet at first, then suddenly full of questions when she felt safe. They came to Little Lantern often, sometimes enrolled for a day, sometimes dropped off without warning. I never charged Taryn the full rate. At first, I did not charge her at all. She would say, "It's just for a few hours, May." And I would open the door because they were my niece and nephew. Then a few hours became whole days. Then whole days became weeks, where Ren and Sophie took spots I could have given to paying families. When I gently mentioned it once, Taryn looked wounded and said, "I thought family helped family." My mother heard about it and called me that night. "Maela, you always land on your feet," she said. "Taryn has kids." That sentence would come back to me later, sharper than any insult. Eldon liked to visit the daycare during pickup, though he rarely came to actually help. He would stand near the front desk and look around like a man estimating the price of things he did not own. "How many kids do you have here now?" he asked once, smiling as if it was just friendly interest. 21, I said. He whistled. "And parents pay what? Weekly, monthly? Must add up." I answered vaguely because something about his tone bothered me. Another time, Taryn stood in my office doorway while I was checking the CareNest ledger portal, the system parents used to pay tuition. She had Sophie on her hip and Ren leaning against her leg. "That's where all the payments go?" she asked. "Most of them," I said. She laughed lightly. "Wow, I can barely keep track of my grocery app." I minimized the screen, not because I suspected her, but because childcare records are private. She noticed anyway. People who plan to cross a line often start by learning where the line is. There were other signs small enough that I filed them away as irritation instead of danger. Taryn asked once if I could show her how refunds worked because one of her friends had a daycare billing issue. Eldon asked if the daycare money went into my personal account or a business account. Taryn offered to help print a permission form from my office computer, even though there was a printer at the front desk. I said no, but I later remembered the way her eyes followed my fingers when I typed my admin password. I had cameras in the building, of course. Every licensed childcare center has safety procedures. Our system, SafeHall Cloud Cam, recorded hallways, entrances, the playground, and the office doorway. No private spaces, no bathrooms, nothing inappropriate, just the areas where safety mattered. I installed those cameras to protect children. I never imagined one of them would protect me from my own sister. The day it happened was Wednesday, September 27th. I remember the date because payroll was due that Friday. Our insurance renewal was due Monday, and the state licensing officer was scheduled to inspect our playground in 2 weeks. The rubber surface under the climbing dome had started peeling near the edge, and Etta Greer, our licensing officer, had already warned me that it needed repair before renewal. I had saved for it carefully. That week, the operating account was supposed to carry us through payroll, food delivery, insurance, and the playground repair deposit. It was tight, but it balanced. I had checked the numbers twice that morning before staff training. My lead teacher, Lennox Baird, was covering the toddler room, while I met with 2 staff members about emergency procedures. The irony of that still sits in my chest. I was training my team to respond to emergencies while my own emergency was walking toward my office in a denim jacket and white sneakers. Taryn arrived at 1:17 p.m. without calling first. She came through the side entrance with Ren and Sophie. Ren's cheeks were flushed, and Sophie was dragging a purple backpack behind her. "May, please," Taryn said before I could even greet the kids. I have an appointment across town, just 3 hours. I know I should have called, but Eldon has the car later, and I can't miss this. I looked at the classroom ratios in my head. We were already full, but Ren and Sovi knew the place, and Lennox was there. I should have said no. I should have said we needed paperwork, payment, notice, all the same rules every parent followed. Instead, I looked at Ren rubbing his chest and Sovi holding out her arms to me, and I said, "Okay, 3 hours, but next time you call first." Taryn hugged me too fast. "You're saving me," she whispered. I did not know then how true that sentence was for her and how expensive it would become for me. About 20 minutes later, Ren started breathing too fast. It was not a full asthma attack, but it was close enough to scare him, and fear made it worse. He had dropped a block tower in the preschool room. Another child laughed, and Ren's face folded in on itself. I heard the sound from the hallway, that high, tight breath children make when panic and lungs get tangled together. I took him to the calm room, a small space with dim lights, floor cushions, and a basket of sensory toys. Taryn followed us halfway, then stopped by the cubbies when I asked her to grab his inhaler from the backpack. She handed it to me, her fingers shaking or pretending to. I sat on the floor with Ren, counted breaths with him, and kept my voice soft. "In like smelling cocoa, out like cooling soup," I told him. Sophie crawled into my lap and pressed her face against my sweater. For 22 minutes, I was not thinking about accounts, passwords, refunds, or my office. I was thinking about a little boy's breathing. During those 22 minutes, Taryn walked down the hallway to my office. Later, I would see it on camera, frame by frame. At 1:46, she looked toward the calm room. At 1:47, she entered my office. At 1:49, she sat at my desk. At 1:52, the printer woke up. At 1:56, she leaned forward, one hand near the keyboard, the other holding her phone. At 2:03, she printed again. At 2:08, she printed a third time. At 2:10, she folded several papers and pushed them into Sovi's purple backpack, the one hanging on the hook outside my office door. At 2:12, she stepped back into the hallway and stood there for a moment, smoothing her hair, becoming my sister again. At 2:14, she came into the calm room and asked, "Is he okay?" I remember looking up at her and feeling grateful she was worried. That memory still embarrasses me. Ren settled down around 2:20. Taryn stayed another hour chatting with Lennox, helping Sophie wash paint off her hands, acting like any tired mother on a hard day. When she left, she kissed my cheek and said, "I don't know what I'd do without you." I said, "Drive safe." I went back to my office and saw my computer awake, but I assumed I had left it that way during the training rush. The CareNest ledger screen was closed. The printer tray was empty. Nothing looked strange. That is the thing about a clean theft. It does not always leave broken glass. Sometimes it leaves your chair pushed in and your sister's perfume in the hallway. I discovered the missing money the next night. Thursday after closing, I sat alone in the office with a cup of coffee gone cold beside my keyboard. The classrooms were quiet, the tiny chairs stacked on tables, the smell of crayons and disinfectant still hanging in the air. I opened payroll first because payroll was sacred to me. My teachers did hard work for modest pay, and I had promised myself I would never be the kind of owner who made employees chase their checks. The operating account should have been a little over $46,000 after the September tuition deposits cleared. Instead, it showed $6,438. At first, my brain refused to read the number. I refreshed the page. I logged out and logged back in. I checked the date filter. Then I saw 3 outgoing refund batches from Wednesday afternoon. $12,400, $15,800, $11,400, total $39,600. Labels: Parent Refund Batch A, Overpayment Adjustment Program Credit Return. I stared at those words until they stopped looking like English. Refunds were not unusual in childcare. Parents changed schedules, state subsidy payments crossed with private payments, families moved, but I had not approved any refunds that week, and certainly not almost $40,000. My hands went cold. That money was not extra. It was already spoken for. Payroll was $12,900. Insurance was $5,600. Food delivery and supplies were nearly $3,200. Playground repair deposit was $8,000. Rent was coming. Taxes were always coming. People who have never run a small business think money in an account is available. It is not. Most of it has names on it before it arrives. That night, every name disappeared. I called CareNest support and stayed on hold for 41 minutes. When the representative finally answered, her voice was cheerful in a way that made me want to cry. She pulled the logs and confirmed the refund batches had been created from my admin account from the office computer on the daycare network between 1:50 and 2:09 p.m. Wednesday. I asked where the refunds went. She said the system showed 3 receiving accounts ending in different numbers, each labeled as parent refund destinations. I asked which parents. She paused. Then she said the names had been manually edited. They were not attached to active family profiles. My office suddenly felt too small. I knew exactly where I had been at 1:50 on Wednesday. I had been sitting on the comm room floor with Ren's inhaler in one hand and Sophie's fingers curled in my sweater. I did not call Taryn right away. That surprises people when I tell it, but it was true. I sat still for a long time. I looked through the office window into the hallway, where the children's paper lanterns hung from the ceiling for our upcoming Lantern Night open house. Red, yellow, blue, green, each one made by small hands that left glue fingerprints on everything. I thought about those children arriving Monday morning, expecting breakfast, songs, blocks, hugs, and clean bathrooms. I thought about Lennox, who had 2 teenagers and a mortgage. I thought about my youngest teacher, Audra, who was saving for community college. I thought about the parents who trusted me because I looked them in the eye and promised their children were safe. Then I called my sister. Taryn picked up on the second ring. "Hey, May, Ren's doing better. Thanks again for yesterday." Her voice was light, casual, almost sleepy. I said, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer carefully." She went quiet. I told her about the refund batches. I told her the times. I told her I was with Ren when they were created. I did not accuse her, not at first. I simply said, "You were near my office." Her breathing changed. I heard a car in the background, maybe Eldon's truck, maybe the television. "Are you serious right now?" she said. "You think I took daycare money?" I closed my eyes. "I think someone used my office computer while I was caring for your son." She laughed once, but it came out dry. "That's insane, Maela. Maybe you clicked something wrong. You're always tired." That first denial lasted less than 5 minutes. The second version came after I told her the portal had logs. "Okay," she said, voice dropping. "Maybe I did something, but it was not stealing. Eldon said we could move it for a few days and put it back before anyone noticed." My throat tightened. "Move it where, Taryn?" She started crying then. Not the deep cry of someone sorry, but the sharp cry of someone cornered. "You don't understand. We were behind on everything. Eldon had people calling, Ren's medication went up, the rent was late, I was scared." I said, "You created fake refunds from my daycare account." She snapped back, "You have a business, I have children." There it was, the sentence that explained everything and excused nothing. My mother called 20 minutes later. I knew Taryn had called her because Mom did not start with hello. She started with, "Maela, please do not make this bigger than it is." I stood in the toddler room while she talked, looking at tiny rain boots lined against the wall. "Mom," I said, "she took $39,600 from my operating account." Mom sighed like I was being difficult about a borrowed sweater. "She was desperate. Eldon has been under pressure, and you know Ren has health issues. Your sister made a bad choice, but she is not a criminal." I pressed my fingers against my forehead. "That money pays my teachers, it feeds children, it keeps my insurance active, it repairs the playground before inspection." Mom's voice softened in the way it did when she was about to ask me to disappear inside my own strength. "You are stronger than she is, honey. You always have been." I looked around my daycare, the one I had built board by board, form by form, dollar by dollar. "That does not mean I am available to be robbed," I said. Mom went silent. The next morning, payroll almost failed. I used my personal credit card to cover part of it and moved money from my emergency savings to cover the rest. I called the food supplier and asked for 3 extra days. I called the playground company and delayed the repair deposit, which made my stomach twist because licensing was coming. I told my staff there had been a banking issue, not because I wanted to hide the truth, but because I needed facts before I put fear into people's mouths. Lennox watched me closely. She had worked with children long enough to know when an adult was pretending to be fine. At nap time, she came into my office and shut the door. Tell me what happened, she said. I told her the short version. She did not gasp. She did not ask if I was sure. She said, then we write down everything from Wednesday. That was the first moment I stopped feeling alone. Lennox made a timeline. She wrote that I had taken Ren to the calm room at 1:43 and stayed there until after 2:15. She wrote that Taryn had moved freely in the hallway while staff were occupied. She wrote that the office was not part of the child area and that Taryn had no reason to enter it. Then I called Ansel Witten, my payroll and bookkeeping specialist. Ansel was 51, quiet, and precise. He wore brown cardigans even in summer and had the patience of a man who had spent 3 decades explaining taxes to people who kept receipts in grocery bags. He arrived after closing with a laptop, a legal pad, and a face that told me he had already decided to take this seriously. Ansel found more in 2 hours than I had found in 2 days. The refund batches had been manually created, not system-generated. The fake names used were close to real parent names, but not exact. One receiving account linked to a prepaid debit card opened under Taryn's married name. Another connected to an old account tied to Eldon's failed contracting business. The third had passed through a payment processor before landing somewhere Ansel could not fully see without bank cooperation. The browser history had been deleted from my office computer, but the printer log remained. 3 refund confirmations printed during the exact window. The money moved. Ansel looked up from the screen and said, "Whoever did this knew enough to imitate normal daycare accounting, but not enough to understand that systems keep fingerprints." I remember that line because it was the first time I felt the ground under me again. Then came the rumors. I do not know exactly who Taryn told first, but by Monday morning, 2 parents had heard that Little Lantern had lost tuition money. One mother asked at drop-off whether her payment information was safe. A father wanted written confirmation that we would stay open through the month. Bryony Pell, a parent council member whose son had been with us since infancy, pulled me aside and asked gently, "Maela, is there anything we need to know?" Her kindness almost broke me. I could handle Taryn's anger and Eldon's lies. I could handle my mother's pressure, but I could not handle the thought that parents might believe I had been careless with the money they trusted me to manage. A daycare is built on trust. Once that cracks, every classroom feels colder. Have you ever noticed how some people take from you quietly, then call you dramatic when you ask where it went? If this part feels familiar, take a second to like the video and share it with someone who needs to hear that asking for proof is not cruelty. Sometimes proof is the only thing standing between your truth and someone else's version of it. Eldon came to the daycare that Tuesday, wearing a navy jacket and the expression of a man arriving to solve a problem he had created. I met him outside because I did not want him near the office. He spread his hands. "Maela, this has gotten out of control." I almost laughed. "It got out of control when your wife created fake refunds from my account." His jaw moved, but the smile stayed. Taryn panicked. "We had bills. Nobody was trying to hurt you. You know how money gets when you have kids." I said, "I know how money gets when 21 children, 4 employees, a food account, insurance, and a license depend on it." He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Do you really want your sister charged over something we can fix privately?" That was when I understood that the money was not coming back unless someone forced it back. People who plan to repay do not start by threatening your reputation. That afternoon, I opened SafeHall CloudCam. I had avoided it for 2 days because part of me did not want to see what I already knew. There is a strange mercy in suspicion. It leaves one small window open, where the person you love might still be innocent. Video closes that window. I searched September 27th, hallway camera 3, office corridor. At first, there was nothing unusual. Staff moving past, a toddler carrying one shoe, Lennox walking with a clipboard. Then I saw myself at 1:43, carrying Sophie on my hip and guiding Ren with my other hand toward the calm room. Taryn stood near the cubbies. She watched us disappear. For about 30 seconds, she did not move. Then she turned, looked once toward the front desk, and walked into my office. I watched the clip without blinking. There was no sound, but it did not need sound. Her body told the whole truth. She moved quickly, not like someone looking for a tissue or a child's form, but like someone who knew exactly what she came to do. She sat at my desk. She pulled her phone from her pocket. She typed. She paused. She typed again. The printer light flashed. She stood, grabbed the pages, sat again, typed more. At one point, she looked toward the hallway and froze. A staff member passed without looking in. Taryn waited until the hallway cleared, then continued. When she finished, she folded the printed pages carefully and placed them in Sovi's purple backpack outside the door. That detail hurt more than I expected. She used her own child's bag as a hiding place. I saved the clip 3 ways: cloud download, external drive, email to myself. Then I sat in the dark office and cried for the first time. Not loud crying, not the kind anyone hears through walls, just silent tears I could not stop while the paused image of my sister in my office glowed on the screen. I cried because I had been on the floor helping her son breathe while she drained the account that helped keep my daycare alive. I cried because Sovi had been in my lap while her backpack waited in the hallway with stolen paper inside. I cried because for years I had thought love meant leaving the door open. Now I was staring at proof that some people see an open door and call it opportunity. The hidden note came from Sovi's cubby 2 days later. We were cleaning the preschool room after pickup, and Audra found a folded paper behind the extra socks bin. "Is this yours?" she asked. It was one of the refund confirmation pages. I knew it before I opened it, because my printer leaves a faint gray line on the left edge when it needs cleaning. On the back, in Taryn's handwriting, were 9 words that changed the case from desperation to planning. "Do it before Friday payroll. She won't check until night." I read it once, then again. Ansel was there, reviewing records at my desk, and I handed it to him without speaking. He looked at it, then at me. "This was not panic," he said. "This was timing." That note became the second blade. The camera showed Taryn in the office. The logs showed the refunds, but the note showed intent. She knew payroll was Friday. She knew I would not check deeply until Thursday night, because Wednesday was training day and Thursday was parent newsletter day. She knew my schedule because I had let her close. She had studied my life from inside the circle of family and used that knowledge like a key. Ansel traced more of the money over the next week. Part had gone toward Eldon's old contractor debt, including a settlement with a flooring supplier who had threatened small claims court. Part went to Taryn's overdue credit cards, and part, the part that made me sit back in my chair and stare at the wall, went toward a deposit for a small beauty studio lease in North Ashburn Plaza. Taryn had not only stolen to survive, she had stolen to start over, using my daycare as the bridge. When I confronted her with that, she did not deny it. She said, "I needed something of my own." Her voice was flat, tired. For 1 second, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Because I understood wanting something of your own. I understood it better than anyone. I had wanted Little Lantern so badly that I ate peanut butter sandwiches for dinner for 2 years while saving for licensing fees. I cleaned houses on weekends. I drove a car with no heat through 2 winters. I painted walls until my hands cramped. I did not take money from her to do it. I said, "You tried to buy your freedom with my payroll." She whispered, "You always make things sound worse than they are." I answered, "No, I make them sound accurate." I filed the police report on October 9th. Detective Corbin Latch met me in a small interview room at the Carver Falls police station. He was broad-shouldered, gray at the temples, and calm in the way people are calm when they have heard every possible excuse and learned to wait for documents. I brought a binder, portal logs, bank statements, printer records, the safe hall camera clip on a flash drive, Lennox's written timeline, Ansel's financial summary, screenshots of the fake refund names, the note from Sovi's cubby sealed in a plastic sleeve, my insurance renewal notice, payroll report, licensing repair notice, everything connected, everything dated. Detective Latch watched the camera clip twice. The second time, he leaned forward when Taryn folded the papers into the backpack. Then he sat back and said, "This is not a family misunderstanding. This is business account fraud and unauthorized computer use." Hearing those words from someone outside the family did something to me. It did not make the pain disappear, but it put a frame around it. In my mother's mouth, it had been a mistake. In Taryn's mouth, it had been desperation. In Eldon's mouth, it had been private family business. In the detective's mouth, it became what it was: fraud, theft, unauthorized access. I gave a statement. Lennox gave one the next day. Ansel agreed to cooperate if records were needed. I also called Etta Greer, the licensing officer, and reported the financial incident before someone else could twist it. That was one of the hardest calls I made. My voice shook when I told her the operating account had been compromised by a family member. Etta listened, then said, "You reported it, documented it, protected payroll, and informed licensing. That matters, Ms. Henswick. Keep everything in writing." For the first time in 2 weeks, I slept more than 4 hours. Taryn did not know about the camera clip yet. That was not an accident. Detective Latch told me not to confront her with all the evidence while the case was being reviewed. I followed that advice, but silence gave Taryn room to grow bolder. She told Mom I was trying to destroy her family. She told two cousins I had always resented her because she had children. Eldon told people the daycare was failing, and I was blaming Taryn to cover bad bookkeeping. By mid-October, the rumors had reached enough parents that Bryony asked for a special parent council meeting during Lantern Night, our annual open house. Lantern Night was supposed to be warm and simple. Children showed art, parents walked through classrooms, we served cookies and apple cider, staff introduced the year's learning themes. This year, it was also supposed to raise donations for the playground repair. I considered canceling it, then I realized canceling would look like hiding. So I did the opposite. I prepared. The week before Lantern Night, I made a second binder, not for the police, but for the people whose trust had been shaken. I did not include private bank details that parents did not need, and I did not expose children's information. I included a simple timeline, proof that payroll had been covered, proof that the insurance renewal was paid, proof that the playground repair was scheduled, and confirmation that the fraud had been reported. I also prepared the camera clip, edited only to blur any child who appeared in the hallway. The important part remained clear. Taryn entering my office, Taryn at my computer, Taryn printing, Taryn hiding papers. I did not want to play it. I want you to understand that. I did not wake up excited to humiliate my sister. But Taryn and Eldon had moved the fight into my daycare community. They had made my silence dangerous. Once a lie threatens your livelihood, truth is no longer drama. It is maintenance. Lantern Night came on a chilly Friday evening. The sun went down early, and the paper lanterns in the hallway glowed under soft battery lights. The children were proud of them, pointing up as they dragged parents from room to room. The multi-purpose room smelled like cider, sugar cookies, and washable paint. Lennox stood near the snack table, watching everything with careful eyes. Ansel sat in the back row with his folder on his lap. Bryony arrived with her husband and gave me a small nod that said she was worried, but still with me. Etta Greer came too, professional and quiet, holding a clipboard. Then my family walked in. Mom first, wearing her church coat, Taryn behind her with Ren and Sophie, Eldon last, smiling like a man entering a room he expected to control. Sophie ran to me and wrapped her arms around my legs. That almost undid me. I bent and hugged her carefully. Ren stood beside Taryn, watching me with serious eyes. None of this was their fault. I need that to be clear. Children do not carry the guilt of adults. I smiled at them, gave them each a cookie, and sent them to the art table with Lennox. Taryn looked at me like my kindness was permission. See? Her face seemed to say, you still love us, so you will not really do anything. Eldon shook my hand in front of two parents, holding it half a second too long. Big night, he said. Hope you can clear up all this confusion. I looked at him and answered, that is the plan. At 6:40, Bryony stood near the front of the multi-purpose room and thanked everyone for coming. Then she turned to me, her voice gentle but public. Maela, before we discuss the playground fundraiser, several parents have asked about concerns around the tuition account. Can you explain what happened and whether the center is secure? The room changed. Conversations faded. Taryn's shoulders relaxed slightly, as if she had been waiting for this moment and expected it to break me. My mother looked at the floor. Eldon leaned back against the wall, arms crossed. I walked to the small projector we used for children's slideshows and placed my binder on the table beside it. Yes, I said. I can explain it now. My voice sounded calmer than I felt. On September 27th, 3 refund batches were created through our CareNest ledger system. They removed $39,600 from the daycare operating account. That money was assigned to payroll, insurance, food service, and a playground repair required for licensing. The refunds were not authorized by me, and they were not connected to real parent accounts. I clicked to the first slide, a simple timeline with no private child information. I showed the refund times. I showed my location in the calm room with Ren, documented by staff. I showed that payroll had been covered from my personal funds and emergency savings. I showed that insurance had been renewed. I showed that the repair had been rescheduled, not canceled. Parents were silent but not cold. They were listening. Eldon spoke first. This seems like a lot of detail for an internal family issue. His voice was smooth, but his eyes were hard. I turned toward him. It became a daycare issue when false information was shared with parents. Taryn stepped forward. Mila, stop. This is not the place. I looked at her, and for a second I saw us as children again. Me tying her shoes, her crying because mom was late, me promising I would take care of everything. That old promise stood between us like a ghost. Then I looked past her at the classrooms, at the lanterns, at my staff, at the parents who trusted me. You chose the place, I said softly, when you brought the lie here. I clicked to the printer log. At the same time, those refund batches were created. 3 confirmation pages were printed from my office printer. No child forms were printed. No enrollment forms, no medical forms, only refund confirmations. Taryn's face tightened. I printed something for Sovi, she said quickly. A form. You know how many forms this place has. Ansel stood from the back row. He did not raise his voice. I reviewed the printer log. That statement is false. A few parents turned toward him. Eldon pushed off the wall. Who even is this guy? I answered. My payroll and bookkeeping specialist. Eldon laughed without humor. Of course. You brought a whole courtroom to a daycare open house. I said, no, I brought records. Then I played the clip. The room went so still I could hear the projector fan. The video showed the hallway from above, the office door at the left edge, the calm room hallway in the distance. I appeared first, guiding Ren, carrying Sovi. Then Taryn stood alone. She watched me leave. She looked toward the front desk. She entered my office. No one spoke. The clip continued. Taryn at the desk, Taryn with her phone, Taryn printing, Taryn folding papers, Taryn placing them inside Sovi's purple backpack. When the clip ended, I did not say anything right away. I let the silence do what silence does when truth has finally entered the room. Taryn's first words were small. I was going to put it back. That was the confession she did not mean to give. My mother covered her mouth. Bryony closed her eyes. Lennox looked down at her shoes, angry in the quiet way teachers get angry when someone endangers children. Eldon moved toward Taryn, whispering, "Stop talking." But it was too late. I looked at my sister. You took the money while I was caring for Ren. Her eyes filled with tears. Don't say it like that. That is how it happened. I was scared. So was I when payroll almost failed. She shook her head, crying harder. You do not know what it is like to feel trapped. That sentence hit the room differently because there were mothers there, tired mothers, working mothers, single mothers, women who knew trapped in their bones. But none of them had stolen from a daycare. I took the plastic sleeve from the binder and held it up. This was found in Sovi's cubby. It is one of the printed confirmation pages. On the back, in Taryn's handwriting, it says, "Do it before Friday payroll. She won't check until night." My mother whispered, "Taryn." Not loud, not dramatic, just broken. Taryn looked at Mom, then at me, and something hard came into her face. Shame, when it cannot become accountability, often becomes anger. You always had everything, she said. The business, the respect. People look at you like you are some saint because you take care of other people's kids all day. I felt heat rise in my chest, but I kept my hand still on the binder. I do not have everything. I have what I built. She snapped. And I had nothing, I answered. So you tried to take mine. Eldon finally lost the smooth voice. Enough. She made a mistake. You got your little proof show. Are you happy now? I turned to him. Part of the money went to your contractor debt. His face changed. It was fast, but everyone saw it. That is not true. Ansel spoke again. The receiving account connected to Quaid Renovation Services accepted $9,200 within 24 hours of the refund batch. Eldon pointed at him. You better be careful. Detective Corbin Latch had been standing near the back entrance for the last few minutes. I had not noticed him come in, but I knew Etta had stepped out earlier to make a call after seeing the clip. He moved forward then, calm and official. Mr. Quaid, I would suggest you lower your hand. The room turned. Taryn stared at the detective as if the floor had opened under her. Detective Latch did not make a scene. He did not handcuff anyone in front of the children. In fact, Lennox had already guided the children to the preschool room with cookies and music as soon as the clip started. That was Lennox, always thinking 2 steps ahead for the kids. The detective asked Taryn to step into the office with him and another officer waiting outside. Eldon tried to follow, but Detective Latch stopped him. We will speak with you separately. Taryn looked at me one last time before she left the room. You called the police on your own sister. I said, I called the police about money stolen from 21 children, 4 teachers, and a licensed daycare. You being my sister did not make that safer. After she left, nobody moved for several seconds. Then Bryony stood. My child has been here since he was 11 months old, she said, voice shaking. I trust this center because Maela tells the truth even when it costs her. Another parent nodded, then another. Etta Greer stepped forward and spoke with the calm authority of someone who had seen centers fail for much less. For the record, Little Lantern reported the financial breach properly, protected payroll, maintained ratios, and has provided documentation for insurance and repairs. Licensing will continue its review, but from what I have seen tonight, the owner acted responsibly. I had held myself together through the clip, through Taryn's confession, through Eldon's anger, but when Etta said acted responsibly, my eyes burned. Sometimes the words you need are not I love you or I am sorry. Sometimes they are simply you did your job. The legal process moves slower than the emotional damage. That is how it usually goes. People expect justice to arrive like thunder, but most of the time it arrives as paperwork. Taryn was charged with unauthorized computer use, business account fraud, and theft. Eldon was investigated for receiving funds and providing false statements about the money trail. Because Taryn had no prior record and because some of the money was recoverable, her attorney negotiated a plea agreement. She pleaded guilty to a reduced felony financial misconduct charge and a misdemeanor unauthorized access charge. The court ordered restitution, probation, community service, and financial counseling. Eldon had to repay the portion tied to his business account and entered his own agreement later. Nobody went to prison for 20 years. Life is not that clean. But the truth went on record. That mattered more than people think. Restitution came in pieces, some from frozen funds, some through a payment plan, some through Eldon's settlement. It did not fix the fear right away. For months, I still checked the operating account 3 times a day. I changed every password, added 2-person approval for refunds, moved payroll controls to a separate system, and installed a lock on my office door that required a code even during business hours. I hated that at first. Little Lantern had been built to feel open, but I learned that safe does not mean unlocked. A safe place has rules. A safe place protects the people inside it. That included me. The daycare survived. Not because it was easy and not because people magically understood. It survived because my staff stayed, parents chose trust after seeing the truth, and I stopped trying to protect everyone's feelings before protecting the business. Bryony organized a playground fundraiser without me asking. Parents brought checks, supplies, and one father who owned a landscaping company repaired the fence gate for free. The playground surface was fixed 2 days before inspection. Etta approved our renewal. Lennox hugged me in the empty toddler room after the inspection and said, "The lantern stayed lit." I laughed for the first time in weeks, then cried into her shoulder because I finally could. My mother did not speak to me for almost a month. Then one Saturday morning, she came to the daycare after closing. I saw her standing outside the front window, looking at the painted lanterns like she was not sure she had permission to enter. I unlocked the door and let her in. She walked slowly through the hallway, past the cubbies, past the art wall, past the office door with its new keypad lock. "I told myself you were too hard on her," she said. "I told myself that because if you were right, then I had been wrong for a long time." I did not answer. She looked into the preschool room, where tiny chairs sat upside down on tables. "I made you the strong one," she said. "Then I acted like strong meant you did not need protection." That was the closest my mother had ever come to naming the whole wound. I said, "I needed you to be my mother, not her defense attorney." She nodded, tears slipping down her face. "I know." We stood there under paper lanterns made by children, and for once, I did not rush to comfort her. Taryn saw me again in January, in the parking lot outside Mom's apartment. She had lost weight. Her hair was pulled back, and she looked tired in a way makeup could not cover. Ren and Sophie were with her. They ran to me before she could stop them. Sophie asked if she could come back to Little Lantern. Ren asked if the comm room still had the blue pillow. I told them yes, because the truth was, yes. Taryn watched us, her eyes red. After the kids got into Mom's car, she said, "I am sorry." I had imagined that moment many times. In some versions, I gave a speech. In some, I walked away. In the real moment, I just felt tired. "I believe you are sorry now," I said. She flinched. "Will you ever forgive me?" I looked at the children through the car window. Maybe, but forgiveness will not give you access again. She started crying. They love you. I love them too. That is why they can have a relationship with me through mom, with clear rules. But you do not get keys to my building, my office, my accounts, or my trust just because we share blood. That was the boundary that changed my life. Not the police report, not the courtroom, not even the camera clip. The real change was learning to say love and no in the same breath. I could love my sister's children and still protect my daycare from their mother. I could forgive my mother and still refuse to become the family emergency fund. I could understand Taryn's fear and still hold her responsible for what she did with it. People act like understanding and accountability cannot live in the same room. They can. In fact, they should. By spring, Little Lantern felt like itself again, but stronger. The new playground surface was bright and clean. The maple tree had fresh leaves. The children made lanterns for the hallway again, and this time I let them choose their own colors instead of planning a theme. Ren came twice a month through an arrangement with mom. Sophie still ran to the reading tent first. Lennox became assistant director because she had earned it long before I had the money to say so. Ansel stayed on as monthly reviewer for the accounts, and every refund required written approval, parent confirmation, and a second login. Parents stopped whispering, new families enrolled, the rooms filled with noise again, blocks falling, songs starting off key, little shoes squeaking on clean floors. Before the final part of this, take this with you. If someone uses your kindness as a shortcut to your money, your time, or your peace, you are allowed to close the door. Like this video if you believe boundaries can be loving, subscribe for more emotional family dramas, and share it with a friend or family member who needs permission to protect what they built. One evening in May, after the last child left, I stood alone in the hallway and watched the camera feed on my phone. Not because I was afraid, not exactly. Because I respected what it had done. Hallway camera 3 had seen what my heart refused to see. It had watched my sister enter my office while I cared for her son. It had recorded the moment family became evidence, but it had also helped save Little Lantern. That is the part I hold on to. The truth did not destroy my daycare. The truth protected it. The lie was what almost destroyed it. I used to think being the dependable one meant staying open. Open door, open wallet, open schedule, open heart. I thought, if I gave enough, people would finally see the weight I was carrying and stop adding to it. But some people do not see a full pair of hands and think, let me help. They think she can carry more. I do not believe that anymore. I built Little Lantern to be a safe place for children. I just forgot that safe places also need locked doors. Now every door has a code, every payment has a record, and every person in my life knows the same rule. Love can enter, but entitlement stays outside. That is how my daycare survived. That is how I survived. Not by becoming hard, but by finally becoming protected. This video is inspired by real-life situations and problems that people often share on public online platforms such as Reddit, AITA-style discussions, confession forums, and other community spaces. We only take general inspiration from real situations, family conflicts, betrayal cases, and emotional problems people discuss online. The script, characters, scenes, dialogue, narration style, commentary, discussion, explanation, and creative presentation are written by us in our own original way. This is our original creative work. We do not copy anyone's personal post or content directly. For privacy and creative reasons, all names, locations, timelines, businesses, organizations, personal details, and events are changed, fictionalized, or reimagined. Any similarity to real people, places, families, businesses, or incidents is purely coincidental. This video uses AI-generated voiceover. AI-generated photos, visuals, and video elements may also be used for presentation. However, editing, creative arrangement, final review, video preparation, and overall content management are done manually by us. This video is made for entertainment, commentary, emotional reflection, and awareness about family boundaries, betrayal, and accountability. Copyright notice. This script, narration, commentary, video concept, creative structure, and final presentation are our original transformed work. Please do not copy, re-upload, reuse, reproduce, or republish our script or video content without permission. Unauthorized use may result in a copyright claim or copyright action. The end.